it's me, Mimi Combs, and today I'm going to go through another month of movies. I know it's been a while since my last upload. I kind of disappeared, and that's because I've been doing a bunch of other stuff other than YouTube, and I thought I just kind of wanted a break. But now I can come back, and since it's been so long, I have a bunch of new movies to share with you guys. If you didn't watch my last video, basically I have a challenge where I watched one movie every single day for a month, but I continued that challenge onward and it's been over 2 months at this point. There's a couple days that I missed, so I'll be filling in the gaps by adding some extra movies onto the end. But basically this video will cover mid-July to mid-August, so let's get started. On July 17th, I watched Where'd You Go, Bernadette? This one was a fun, comedic movie good for families, but I didn't really find anything in it all too interesting that I would want to rewatch. And it wasn't like an amazing movie, it was just a fun watch. So if you guys have the service it's on, I have it listed in the corner, then you should watch it in your free time if you got a family or if you got kids. It's just like a good movie that I think anyone could enjoy, but it's probably geared more towards a younger audience. The next day I watched Mid-90s, and I thought this one was a good story. It's about this kid who wants to learn how to ride a skateboard and make friends with all these new people. It's definitely rated R, so it has a lot of language in it, just beware of that. But other than that, there's really not too much inappropriate stuff in it, just a lot of language. It was definitely a lot even for me, so I would recommend that you are careful who you watch this movie in front of, and so they don't start talking like the characters in this movie, because they are definitely not good influences. But overall I think the characters were really likable and complex. Would recommend. Next up we have I, Tonya, and I really like this one. I think it was definitely a well-made movie, and it's interesting that it's based off a true story. The acting in it was great, but it's not a very uplifting movie. It's more just like for older audiences and about like acting. It's more serious. So keep that in mind if you want to watch, but I highly recommend this one. It was really great. Next up we have Where Hands Touch, and I actually really enjoyed this movie. I know it has some negative reviews and it's maybe not like the most realistic or like great portrayal of the Holocaust, but I think it was okay for what it was, and that's just like a romance movie, which is kind of weird given the circumstances. But you know, I think it's good and I would recommend it, but not if you're looking for anything serious or like really insightful in that sort of way. The Sapphires was a really impressive movie for me since I didn't have expectations and I'd never heard of it before, but I really recommend this one. It's about a girl group from New Zealand and they're trying to go on this tour in Vietnam. It's a great story and you get to learn about these sisters and like their relationships and everything, and I think it was well done. And I recommend this one since it's based off a true story as well. Next up we have Fast Color, and I thought this one was really interesting. It's definitely different. It's kind of like a sci-fi dystopian, but like also very small scale, which is really interesting because that genre usually they like show you about this whole world, but this one's just more about this one girl, and I think it's well done, but it was also kind of just odd. I recommend if you're into those kind of interesting or like kind of superhero-y movies, then this one is one for you. It's definitely different. It's not like a superhero movie, it's not an action movie or anything, but it's definitely different. Status Update is possibly the worst movie I have ever seen, but I think it's funny because it's so terrible. I think it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting. And I like that the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. It's actually really reminiscent of DCOMs, which are Disney Channel original movies. So if that gives you the idea, it's like every DCOM tried to like pack itself into this movie. Kind of like Freaky Friday. You know, it's just a lot. It's just a lot. Next up is I Can Only Imagine, and I think this one was really good, and I was really nervous because I've watched movies in the past that are kind of like based like religious, and they are very strong about that, but this one is more just like this person, and although they are religious, it can be enjoyed by anyone of any religion, and I think that it was done really well, and it gives a good backstory and everything to the situation. It's also based off of a true story, and there's a song. So, Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong is unlike other movies I've seen. It's more just like a running conversation throughout the movie, so if that's interesting to you, go ahead and watch it. There is a lot of amazing scenery of Hong Kong that it shows. It just shows a lot of like visuals, and I think that part of this movie is really well done. But the whole movie is basically just people walking while talking. There's not much action or anything, and I didn't find the ending too satisfying. I don't want to spoil anything, but it was not what I was expecting, and I don't really like it, honestly. It was an artistic choice, but not the artistic choice I would have chose. Next up, we got The Help. And I've heard a lot of bad things about this movie, and I definitely saw problems with it. I thought that it was good, and it definitely isn't like the movie where you're gonna learn a lot about like what life was like and all that sort of thing. I feel like the white savior trope is an issue. The fact that it was written by white people and directed by white people and all that stuff is an issue. But I think the movie itself is actually fairly good, but I just wouldn't view it as like a realistic depiction of what life was like in that time, just kind of as a movie set in that time. So you just kind of have to go into it with that mindset, and I think it's better that way. Next up is Like Crazy, and I thought the acting in this one was really good. The story was fun, but it's more of like an indie, and it's definitely character driven, not the most exciting or action-packed thing. The ending in this one was definitely interesting, kind of like indie movies sometimes are, but I think that if you're looking for a movie that'll make you think and that gives a realistic depiction of what sometimes happens in relationships, then I would give this one a shot. But it's not a fun kind of feel-good movie, to say the least. The next movie I watched is The Kissing Booth 2. I think the first one was okay. I never really liked the actors and the characters, but this one, the plot was just all over the place. If you watched the first Kissing Booth movie and you're really bored, I would just recommend putting this on. But, you know, it's just annoying at times. The little like music montage scenes are quite annoying. That's just what Netflix does. They're catering to like a specific audience with this one, which is like teens who read Wattpad, who like romance. But that's just how it is. Diane is an indie movie about an older woman who's just kind of like dealing with family stuff, living alone, and that sort of situation. It's very realistic, and although the plot isn't that exciting, I think it was an interesting watch, and I'm glad I watched it. To be honest, I don't remember it too well, but you know, it's very emotional and also a serious movie, so there's not too much like exciting impact points, but I think if you're into like artsy movies, then you might want to check this one out. The Tomorrow Man is about a movie who is preparing for the apocalypse, I think, and a woman who is kind of a hoarder, and it's interesting because they're like older and dealing with all these things and trying to make sense of each other and like that sort of situation, and you just kind of see their lives, and it's really interesting, and I liked this one and I thought it was a good watch. So if you're looking for an artsy movie about kind of like older people, then I recommend this one. The Cookville Miracle is based on a true story of a school that was basically held hostage by this man, and I think it was an interesting movie just because like it kind of like gives you the information of kind of what happened. It was good for what they were working with since they only had this one situation, but I think it didn't make the best movie as a whole. Moonlight, the one who stole the Oscar from La La Land. It's about this boy growing up in Florida, and he is black and he's also potentially gay, so there's that interesting things that make life a little more difficult for him, and also just like the situation he's growing up in, and you get to see everything. The movie was really great and I highly recommend it. The ending was not my favorite, but I think it was okay. The movie was really well done. Highly recommend it if you're into like indie or A24 films. So that's kind of like the audience of this one. It is rated R, so it's not for kids, but you know, that's this movie. We have now entered August. The first movie I watched was Okja. I really liked this one. It is rated mature, but it's not too mature. I mean, it's kind of mature, but it's like not too mature. It's about this genetically modified pig contest where they're going to send them all over the world, and whoever has the biggest pig wins. South Korea, they have okja, and you get to meet the main character, and she's friends with her pig. And when the contest is over, things kind of like go down. Highly recommend. It's on Netflix, so like a lot of you have it. I think like 62% of people have Netflix, so recommend this one. Next movie we have is Juliet Naked. It is like a rom-com drama movie. And despite the title, there's not really much nudity at all in this movie, so don't worry about that. It's about this guy who's like really obsessed with this musician and this album, and his girlfriend starts talking to the actual musician and they become kind of like pen pals. It's an interesting situation to say the least. And I mean, I recommend it if you're looking for a rom-com. And the next day I watched A Brilliant Young Mind. It's about this boy who's on the autism spectrum, and his whole life he has been set on going to math Olympiads, and it's basically about his journey and about like the competition, and they get travel and all this stuff. It was good and I recommend it to others. It's kind of like a teen drama, but it could be enjoyed by all ages. Not really teen specific, but you know. Next I watched What They Had. It's kind of like another serious drama towards older audiences, indie sort of movie, and it's not that exciting, but basically it's about this woman who has dementia and her husband is trying to cope with it, and their kids are just trying to convince him to put her into a nursing home. That's this movie. The next day I watched Mulan, the OG version, and let me just say, if you're gonna watch a Disney movie, this is the one to watch. I've watched it like a million times at this point. Quite good. I also watched it with friends, so that was fun. Shout out to all my friends. It's great. It's a masterpiece. The songs, Mushu, Mulan. I mean, if you haven't watched Mulan, then what rock are you living under? Just come out already. Next up is The Shape of Water. This is one of the few that's not on a streaming service because I got the movie from the library. I was set on watching this one because it won the Oscar for Best Picture, and so I was like, gotta watch it, and I'm honestly surprised because it's not the type of movie that usually would win Best Picture. It's more of like a sci-fi, kind of like set in older times, and it was interesting. There was definitely some nudity in this one. I was like, ooh. But it was okay in general. I thought it was interesting. Definitely kind of weird, and it was different. But anyway, would recommend, especially if you're like a movie buff situation person, then this is the movie for you. Next up I watched The Florida Project, and I thought this one was good and I was interested and loved the characters a lot. I think the plot wasn't like exciting, but it was definitely interesting and like a different perspective, and it was giving like a good like realistic look at the lives of these people who live in motels in Orlando, Florida because they can't afford it, they don't have the right amount of like credit to get an apartment. It's really good, and it is by A24, so it's definitely like an indie drama movie with lots of like artsy shots. I love that they turned the saturation like up 100% in this movie. It makes everything look so bright. Work It is the next movie I watched. It is a Netflix original. It's a dance movie, kind of like people compared it to Pitch Perfect, but I think it's more like teeny, and it's definitely not as funny as Pitch Perfect. It's not a comedy really. It's more of just a drama, and it was fairly predictable, not gonna lie, and I didn't really like the main character too much. But I mean, it was okay, you know, it was just like an okay movie. It wasn't like great. It was fun to watch. Like while I was watching it, I was having a good time, but like nothing really stuck with me, so not the best, but okay. My camera's gonna die, so I'll finish this later. I might be wearing a different outfit. You shall see, we shall see. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I'm back. For you guys, it's only been a couple seconds, but for me, it's been 2 whole days. I'm wearing no overalls, but I'm wearing the same shirt because I wanted a little bit of like continuity stuff. So we're gonna get right back into the movie reviews. Next I watched Little Men, which I was really impressed with because I hadn't ever heard of it before, and it came out fairly recently. They had some great Percy Jackson references in there, but basically it was just this movie about these 2 kids who are best friends, and the situation between their families is kind of complicated, and you kind of like just go through there, and it's a nice movie about like character and people and realistic situations. It's definitely kind of like a drama indie, but I'm not sure if it's an indie, so don't quote me on that. But yeah, I would recommend it if you have the service it's on. I also didn't really know much about To the Stars before watching it, and I also enjoyed this one as well, so I recommend it. It's basically about a girl in high school, and the setting is kind of like this southern city, kind of back in the day. I just really enjoyed getting to see the different setting, and I think they did a good job of making it seem realistic, and all the people seem realistic and interesting. Next I watched A Whisker Away, which was honestly really weird and strange. The first half I enjoyed, but the second half it just got a little bit weird, and I mean, I guess that's the thing with like anime movies, sometimes they get weird. I didn't love this one the most. I really enjoyed this one little picture of this one guy with a book over his head. I can recreate. Basically, people are like running around throwing desks at each other, and this one kid is like this. I loved that so much, but the rest of the movie was just mediocre. Honestly, the whole premise of like the girl turns into a cat to impress her crush is very strange. If you're bored, maybe you want to watch it, but it's quite odd. Next up, I watched Electric Love, which is an indie about online dating in Los Angeles. It follows a bunch of different people, and I think it was well done. I've never heard of any of the actors or anything. I'd never even heard of this movie, and I couldn't find that many reviews on it. But I did think it was good, and I think it's a little underrated, honestly. But that said, if you're not into like dramas or indies or anything, this one isn't the most exciting, but it does appeal to a younger audience than other ones I've talked about before because they're like younger people and these are young adults. So if you're ever thinking of online dating in Los Angeles, this one might be fun for you. Rabbit Hole is the next movie I watched, and it follows husband and wife after the passing of their child, and it's just them dealing with the situation, like, and conflict arises and just like their different ways of dealing with it. So it's really good to watch. I think the acting in it is great, and I highly recommend it if you're interested by that description. But as I said before, these kind of movies aren't really for kids. They're more for like people who like watching movies, so if you're one of those people, I recommend it. Next up, I watched A Silent Voice, and I recommend this one really highly because I really enjoyed it, and it's one of the best anime movies I have seen. A Silent Voice is about a boy who used to bully this girl in elementary school because she was deaf, and in high school he just goes out to reconnect with her, and he kind of wants to make amends and to be friends. This one's so emotional and so well done, and I really like it, so you should watch it. This one's really great, and it's definitely like more serious than other ones, especially like A Whisker Away. That one's like kiddie, and this one's definitely like more serious and can appeal to like all ages. And the last movie I'm going to be talking about today is Shoplifters, and this is a Korean movie that I found on Hulu. It is really good. I highly recommend it. It's more serious definitely than some other movies. It's rated R, so make sure that you're in a mature audience if you're going to watch. Basically though, this movie is about a young girl and a young boy living with this family, and they have to shoplift because the family is really poor and struggling, and you get to see everyone in the family and learn about each of them as a character, and it's really good and really impressed me. But you know, it's more serious, so keep that in mind. Like last time, I really wanted to create like a top 5 list of movies that you need to watch from this list. However, I don't have the full like ones I talked about with me today. I'm going to edit in the titles that you should watch. So the movies that I think that you should definitely watch from this list, although there's more that I think are great, are firstly, and da-da, then da-da, and da-da, and lastly, and that's not in any particular order, but I think that you should watch those movies. Those are my favorites from the list, just so you know. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed getting all these movie reviews, and you might be able to stream some of them. I know last time a lot of them weren't actually available on Hulu. They were like available on this premium version of Hulu, so I'm sorry if I did some problems there and made some mistakes. But this time they should all be available on the services I have listed in the corner of the screen. So go off and watch all these movies just like I did. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next month for another one of these, and I haven't been uploading as frequently, but I will try to upload whenever inspiration strikes, so I'll see you sometime then. Okay, bye everyone!